Well, I'm putting an edge on my custom-made fleshing knife. If you wanted to buy a knife like this, it'd probably be about $300 or $400, depending upon who you buy it from. But started off with some thick steel, 1/4 inch thick steel, and went ahead and shaped it, cut it out, polished it, got all the rust off of it because it was an old steel, some scrap I got relatively cheap. And now to the point where I'm going to go ahead and sharpen it. I'm putting the bevel grinding edges on there, kind of like would like to get a Scandi grind, but I'll go ahead and take whatever grind I end up with because I'm gonna have to make it razor sharp, go ahead and flesh down the skins and stuff. Now this particular knife is mainly made to be used on deer, elk skins, elk skins, and caribou, moose, and bisons and things like that, because trying to hold something large like a bison skin or a large elk skin against the automated fleshing machines, that gets a little tiresome. So basically you put this here on a beam, the skin on a beam, you take your knife to it, you just go to it. You trappers, you people that have already had some experience fleshing, you know what I'm talking about. Now on anything like this here, I'm just using the common everyday materials. I'm using a angle grinder, spins about 14,000 RPMs, gets the job done real quick. You have to be careful of heat, and when you start going across on the blade, don't bear down too hard, moderately, but keep the angle grinder moving. Otherwise you'll build up too much heat, you'll take the temper out of the metal. And I could go ahead and re-temper the whole thing, gun blue it, paint it, coat it with oil and use it, but I think I'm probably going to go ahead and blue it sometime in the future. But right now, let's see if I can't finish this up on this side, because I think I only need a couple more passes. Since you are using metal grinding equipment, as with sawdust, the metal, yes, it does give off like a dust in there, particles be coming off. Try to use a little something over your nose, try to prevent yourself from breathing it. Well, it's getting right down there. Right now, old fleshing apron made out of leather broke free. Gonna have to fix that. But a little bit of a close-up of what I got going on here. Basically, what you're looking at here would be going this way. And it's heavy, yes, it's heavy. Have to put wood handles on it. Going down on the fleshing beam. And you want something that's a little bit heavy, just simply because it's going to help in fleshing out a large skin. You can use smaller knives, and thousands of people use them. But anyway, you have your beveled cutting edge here. Over here, when I get done with this here, it would be perfectly flat, and 90-degree corners is what you want. Sharp 90-degree corners. So instead of taking a chance where you're cutting, you've done with that. But if you just want to push off big chunks of meat, big chunks of fat, things like that, you would use this edge. And you just go and just push that down. It's time consuming, takes time. You got to have patience. I'm amazed I can do anything like that just simply because I don't have the patience for it. But I do it. I've been doing it for 40 years, so. But a chunk of steel, you can make yourself a nice fleshing knife. Make it to your dimensions, to whatever it is you want. Well, the rough shaping of the metal, almost done. A couple things you usually have to do is go ahead and clarify any faux pas or mistakes that you have to do in shaping the metal. Now, if I was going to pick this up without gloves on, it'd be really, really hot. And like I said, that's something you want to be careful with. You don't want to overheat your metal, because then you lose what temper you have in it. If you plan on tempering your metal, as in making knives, mox nix on that one, it just depends. Now, just to give you an idea, see what I'm shooting for here? What is that, about a 30 degrees on both sides. I'm getting this area thin. Now, this is just about thin enough where I can no longer use an angle grinder on it. I'm going to have to use hand tools and get that final sharpness, that final edge that I want on there. Now, here when the blade was made, when I was making it, and a little chip in it, that will work its way out over time. Now, I could just go ahead and flatten all this and redo it. I don't want to do that. That's a lot of work. I can still shave comfortably with this as long as all of this here is sharp. That's a heck of a fleshing knife. Once I get the handles on it, be fleshing down that beam, it's going to do a heck of a job. And this is something, again, you can make at home. Make in your shop, what have you, or if you just want to spend $200, $300, $400, whatever they cost right now. Now you can get some of the other different knives, a post knife, they're good. I'm using the word knife because that's what you do call them, fleshing knife. And necker knife, old piece of iron that's all polished up, but this here's actual steel. You can get it looking pretty, make it pretty as you want. Take your time, just make it look functional. Once I get the wooden handles on, once again, it should work just fine. And I've saved about $300. Now what I'm trying to do is going to shape the handles of the fleshing beam. Usually all the handles should fit a little bit loose, not always all the time, but you can see this one here is not too bad. We're going to epoxy the handles back on. Now, this is Chinese elm. wood. Wood that we had right here in our yard. One of our trees had to do some limbing, so went ahead and took some limbs off, and they're about the right size diameter. Used a drill bit to go ahead and dig out down in there 4 inches. Keep about 4 inches long. Now, here's a piece of wood, one of the handles, that I'm already making little faucets going across, or facets, little flat areas. I really don't want something that's perfectly round, because if it's perfectly round, it seals up your hand, where you can't get hardly any movement. It just makes it real tight, it's uncomfortable. But with the flat areas I'm making here, nothing's sealed up perfectly, and you have a little bit of air, a little bit of room, a little bit of leadway in there. Now also, as you saw earlier, I was going back and forth, back and forth. I just didn't put it on there and apply some pressure, because number one, you'll burn the wood. Number two, it creates too much heat. In a makeshift sander like this, which is a belt sander turned upside down, real easy. You got a belt sander, you don't have to go buy some fancy $300 machine. Turn it upside down, secure it as best you can, get it a little bit at an angle. I'm using a 60 grit belt on here right now. I could use a more coarse belt, but what that would do would tear it up too quick. And with this 60 grit belt, 60 or an 80 grit belt, it's ready to accept the oil that I'm going to put on here to seal the wood. A lot of people want it left raw because it looks nice, but I want to go ahead and seal it up later. So what I'm doing here, as you can see, come back and forth, hold it straight, look here at the thicker parts, go to the opposite side, go to the parallel side, try to get this here a little bit flatter if you want, clean it up, dust it off later, and then we'll oil it. I'm going to do the same thing for all of these. Meanwhile, I'll be checking just to make sure everything seems to fit nice. A little bit loose. Put a little bit of epoxy in there. Slip that back on when the time's right. Let it dry. Let it dry like this, so none of the epoxy comes out and goes down on your blade. Something that's real important here, I have to tell you. You notice I'm not wearing gloves. I have them here. But I find that the gloves takes away my dexterity. However, taking away your dexterity by wearing gloves is a lot safer than taking away a lot of skin or maybe even a finger. So you have to be careful. Use common sense, a little bit of eye protection. And in this case, you can see how fast that belt's turning there. Your finger hits that, it's going to hurt. The same way with angle grinders, or any other machinery. Try to take the necessary safety precautions if you can. Be conscious of what you're doing, and your project will turn out very well. Here you can clearly see that these fleshing knives are approximately 2 feet long, so it's 2 feet of steel for each knife. They're 5/16 of an inch thick. Actually, they were cut specially out of a U-channel, and as you can see, the large one right at 24 inches, the smaller one right at approximately 23.5 inches. Actually, it's right on, isn't it? So they're about 2 feet of steel in each knife. 5/16 of an inch thick. There's a lot of mass behind this knife, the upper knife, for shaving skins thin. Now, each one of these knives I went ahead and beveled to make a cutting edge on each side. A lot of knives don't have that. They only have one side that's beveled down. The other side would be flat. But again, on these two knives, they're made a little different. Custom making them. I have both sides beveled down. Just means I got to be very careful, because you can really nick a hide pretty easy. But then I can do a lot more with these knives. On the opposite end, if I flip the knife over and use the opposite end, I could use this here as a pushing side. You want to keep this 90 degrees so you have some sharp angles on here. Fairly sharp anyway, so you can actually push the skin when you use the knife. For the fleshing, for tighter membrane, and to even thin the skin, you use the obvious sharp side. Now, look what I did. I went ahead and I drew out a pattern for you. I will take a good picture of this, put it along with this video, so you can more or less get a general idea of what it is you want. And if you want, you can go ahead and print out a picture of it and use it as a pattern. Or just go ahead and make your own. Alright, what we're going to do now is go ahead and epoxy on the handles. I'm going to do one. Obviously it's the same for all the handles. So what I want to do here is, since we did drill down in there, sometimes it gets real thin. So I want to keep the epoxy from getting all over the handle. So I'll just use some paper tape wrap it around just to be safe, and I have a little line right up here on the handle that I just want to make sure no further epoxy will get on it. If it does, probably get it off pretty easy. Make sure this fits on there. What I want to do is mix it up and pour it, scoop it out, put it in there. So go ahead and fill up all the voids. Equal amounts here. That should be plenty. Not for sure. Go ahead. Hold this for 5 minutes, and that should be good enough to hold it until it dries thoroughly. For full strength, it takes 24 hours usually. Here are the finished products: taxidermy and tanning fleshing knives. Here, the top one's the big one. Pushing capabilities, that edge, flat edge, 90 degrees. The cutting edge, I have it beveled on both sides, but that's not necessary. It's just something I do because it's easier to slice and cut with. And if you're not paying attention, it's easier to nick a hide and slice and cut with too. So you have to be careful. Now, the next one is a straight, flat piece. Have them labeled, the top right there to show you. Again, on the back, you have the flat part for pushing hides, flesh, and skin, and membrane. In here, you have the double beveled side. Again, this is a special taxidermy and tanning fleshing knife. Now here you have your standard knife that I made, post knife. It's not the brand post, but it's one that I made, kind of like flat handles on two sides. Now here you just have a beveling on one side, right here. The other side is flat. That way when you actually push with the knife, this cuts the top, and supposedly you don't have any fear of cutting the bottom side of the hide. So but this here is your standard style, beveled only on one side. You can make that style one bevel on a larger knife like this one, big heavy knife. But again, I made this here for special use on those big thick heavy hides. So that's what they look like. Now as far as the handles go, you can stain those and darken them, making them look nice, or keep them just the way you want to, right there. Either way it goes, I do recommend at least putting some boiled linseed oil on there, letting it soak in and seal the pores of the wood. That way they will be sealed up from the fat and oils from fleshing animals.